This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.
In all fairness, I have dismissed Pragmata up until literally 2 months ago, when the latest trailer debuted during the Keighleys. I knew the game had a very long announcement and development time, revealed to be in development for the PlayStation 5 and originally releasing in 2022. Well, that obviously took longer than expected, but now Pragmata is real and releasing later this year on all platforms. While the demo has been out for a few months elsewhere, it now being available on Nintendo Switch 2 has finally gotten me to try it out. Capcom has been doing great work the last several years on their well-known franchises, but with Pragmata I feel like they are really cooking. The demo isn't that extensive. It took me about 15 minutes on the first try, but it is great at setting the scene. As a stranded space marine, you control Hugh Williams, who is assisted by a little android girl named Diana. As the duo gets besieged by robots, Diana is able to use her hacking abilities to open up their robotic armor, giving Hugh an opening to destroy their enemies. The demo has a pretty clear goal: reaching the main power supply and restoring power to the space station. Along the way, you'll need to access and open gates as well as fighting different types of robotic enemies. What I especially like about the gameplay loop of Pragmata so far is that at all times you are essentially controlling two characters. This isn't a situation like The Last of Us or other games where you have access to multiple characters and can switch back and forth between them. Diana's abilities are strictly linked to the face buttons and the left shoulder buttons, while Hugh's primary actions are controlled with joysticks, D-pad and the right shoulder buttons. I'll admit that it takes a little getting used to, because each time you encounter an enemy or obstacle, a little grid pops up for Diana's hacking. With the face buttons corresponding to a specific direction, you need to get from the starting block to the green node with a path you design. This quickly becomes time sensitive as gameplay does not halt or stop during these segments. Dodging with Hugh becomes key as you are dividing your attention between the hacking and the combat. Using his limited thrusters to dodge and jump, as well as supplemental weapons that can slow down the advancing robots, you always feel like you're multitasking on the spot. This mechanic is something that strangely enough reminded me of 2012's Zombie U on the Wii U. Here, each time you had to go into your inventory, you needed to look down to the Wii U's gamepad screen and could be jumped by enemies. This interactive play between the player's attention to the hacking as well as the robots is fundamental here. I think that Pragmata's use of this mechanic is such a clever twist on this idea. In the age of second screen media, it is almost baffling to me that this hasn't been explored before. It all comes down to a thrilling boss battle that combines continued hacking with specific nodes that need to be avoided and dodging out of the way of a targeted rocket system in time to deal massive damage to specific parts of the enemy. If I have any concern, it is more so with the overall structure of the game. The demo hints at a dedicated hideout where you can upgrade weapons and abilities, as well as a way to use all the energy you collect from downed enemies. While I don't expect this system to be as clever as the combat on display here, the painfully slow way in which your basic gun recharges had me wishing I could upgrade it right away. It also could be this specific set piece, but the space station really felt straightforward. Going off the main path did reward me, and there's boxes to break aplenty, but the log entries weren't that engaging to dive deeper into the world the game presents. I can only hope that the final game has more open areas that can accommodate larger enemies that require different methods to defeat. What I am not disappointed with is the performance on Nintendo Switch 2. Before I booted up the demo, I played the demo first on PlayStation 5 in fidelity mode to get a sense of how it runs on beefier hardware. But in all honesty, the Switch 2 version to my eyes runs on par with the PlayStation 5 demo. It remains to be seen that it can be up with for the full game, but I was shocked at how well the game handled on Nintendo's handheld, especially given that this game has not been designed from scratch for the Nintendo Switch 2. The only downside is the lack of a performance mode that can bump the frame rate, but I really wasn't bothered by the presentation. Textures look a bit worse for wear and the hair on Diana isn't fantastic, but those are details I can happily brush aside if it means I can comfortably play this on my morning commute. But of course, I couldn't pass this opportunity to let John loose on the footage and see if he could spot any differences. John, if you will.
Thanks, Willem. Pragmata on Switch 2 demonstrates some interesting, yet clearly very intentional choices from Capcom. On PlayStation 5, Pragmata runs at 60 frames per second in its fidelity mode, and only reaches a resolution of 1080p. It's a 50% scale of a full 2160p or 4K. Not bad by any means, but not especially high for a PS5 game. An alternate performance mode pushes the frame rate even higher and the resolution lower. So it seems like the developers have favored fluidity over image quality, and that decision has been maintained on Switch 2. The Switch 2 version only has one graphics mode, but just like PS5, it's targeting 60 frames per second. To accomplish this, the internal resolution when playing docked has been dropped all the way down to 540p. We're obviously very limited by a relatively short demo, but after counting 4 different shots in different locations, I saw no indication of dynamic resolution. And to be clear, in modern games, that actual internal resolution of a render doesn't really tell the whole story when it's paired with scaling solutions like DLSS. The game certainly has a soft appearance, but manages to look quite good for 540p. I should also note that the actual HUD, including that hacking screen over on the right side, is rendered at a full 1080p on Switch 2. So if we treat the Switch 2 version like it's essentially a 1080p version of the game versus the PS5's 4K version of the game, then the relative rendering resolution scaling is actually the same for both, as 540p represents 50% of a full 1080, just like 1080 represents 50% of a full 4K. I'd love to see Capcom try out a 30 FPS cap on the Switch 2 version just to see how high we could get that resolution to go, but it's clear that frame rate is the priority here. Not to mention Capcom's history with 30 FPS caps isn't exactly stellar. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Willem.
Thank you, John, and it just goes to show that I don't know the difference between 1080p and 540p. But all in all, this demo has rocketed Pragmata to one of my more anticipated games of the year. Its gameplay ideas feel fresh, it comes across as a cool blend of a narrative-driven action game with puzzle elements, and it seems to be running great on Nintendo Switch 2. If this game doesn't overstay its welcome and has a few more tricks up its sleeve, we may just be looking at one of the biggest surprise multi-platform games of the generation. Only time will tell, but do yourself a favor and check out the demo for Pragmata.
This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.